Alright, today I need to put spark plugs in the Hyundai Sonata 2.7 liter V6. This one is kind of a pain in the butt because some of the spark plugs are under here, which are actually fairly easy to get at, but 3 of them are under here. So I have to take off the top part of this plenum in order to get at those rear spark plugs. But it's time to do it because it's misfiring, so let's get it done. You see right here, first 3 are nice and easy to get at. Back. So we'll start with these 3 and we're going to do the wires as well. Parts for today's job, I went with a Beck Arnley set of wires, and for the spark plugs I'm using NGK Laser Platinum. These are the original plugs. Whenever somebody asks me what kind of spark plug I recommend for a car, and I do sell auto parts for a living, I always tell them whatever the original engineer who designed the car recommends. That's what I recommend. Whatever comes original, that's what you should really stick with for the most part, unless you're trying to do something custom, you know, put a turbo on or something like that. But if you're just keeping it completely stock, stick with the stock plugs and you really won't run into problems. Alright, first off, we do this when the engine is cool. Second thing, when we're replacing wires, we do it one at a time. Make sure that we don't mess up our firing order. Pull off one wire, and then we match it up. Grab our stack of wires, grab our old one. I think it's going to be this one. And there it is. Take the old one, toss it, take the new one, get it ready to put in place. First we have to replace the spark plug. For spark plugs, I love using this ratchet I got from Snap-on. Turns into a speed handle, so it's perfect. Perfect for pulling them out quickly. I think this is a 5/8, but let's double check. Yeah, that's a winner. You know what? These plugs didn't last as long as usual, and these are auto lights. Let's keep that in mind. So for this, I removed the ratchet from the extension, and I start it by hand. Just a little bit of the dielectric grease in the boot. Pop it on there. Alright, one down, 5 to go. Easy enough. On to the next one. Pull that bad boy out. Drop the ratchet in. Alright, so I know a lot of people like to put anti-seize on the threads to keep them from getting stuck in there. I went to automotive school and I had a teacher in my electronics class who said never to do that because it'll actually cause a little bit of resistance between here and here. You need the spark plug is actually grounded through the threads. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've never used any ever since I heard that, and I've never had a problem getting them out later on. Just don't over tighten them. Pull the next one and let's match it up. And there it is. Take the old one, toss it aside, take the new one. Sure, okay. I'll get this one. Old one, toss it, new one, ready? Change the spark plug. With platinum and iridium spark plugs, you don't gap them. They come pre-gapped. If you try and gap it, you could mess up the tip. So they don't want you gapping them. They just want you putting them in. Alright, now that we have this little air hose, air intake hose set aside, you get a little bit better picture of what we have to do. Number one, we're going to have to disconnect a few of these vacuum hoses. There's one right here we're going to have to disconnect. There's one right here we got to disconnect. This one right here we got to disconnect. Now there's going to be a few electrical connectors that we're going to have to disconnect as well. We don't have to disconnect this one here. This is for the fuel pressure regulator. I don't know if you can see it from that angle. We're just going to disconnect the fuel pressure regulator from the upper part of the plenum. Now that we've gotten some electrical connectors disconnected, we've gotten our vacuum hoses disconnected, the next thing we're going to have to disconnect, unfortunately it's a pain, but we're going to have to disconnect these cables. Zoomed in tight on the cables. It's going to be a 14 millimeter. Now, the throttle cable you don't have to remove from the throttle body, but the cruise control cable you do. Alright, let's shift over to the side. Take a closer look here. See, there's a couple more electrical connectors that have to come undone. And then we're just going to disconnect this cruise control cable. You might need a small screwdriver to get this tab up. In order to disconnect the cable, just turn it. You see there's a slot that you can fit the wire through. There we go. Now it's time to start unbolting the plenum itself. We're going to start with the obvious bolts on top, but there's going to be a few hidden ones in the back. Okay, all of these bolts on top here, including the two nuts on either side, are 12 millimeter. Going to use a 12 millimeter step-on swivel impact socket. Break them free. We can see when we lay them out here that the two that go in the back row are long, the three that go in the front row are short. This bolt here you can't see. This is what my dad used to call mechanics by braille. You can feel it. Alright, now there's three little 12 millimeter bolts that go on the back here. You can see I'm zoomed in on one of them right here. Zoom it out. There's one here, there's one back here, and both of them I use a short extension with a 12 millimeter. But for the one that's in the middle, I'm going to use a slightly longer extension. Again, so that is a 12 millimeter, and there's three of them back there. One last thing we need to do is we need to remove this ground wire right here. This ground wire is held on both sides, and it doesn't matter which side you remove, by a 10 millimeter bolt. you do choose to remove this side, the side that's on the plenum, make sure that you remember that it's got a bracket here too. Remember to put that bracket back when you put your ground wire back. Now it's really easy to forget there are also two vacuum lines on the underside of the throttle body. So let's make sure we get those as well. Take that and just flip it over and we have good access. Now you can see we've got the upper plenum removed. We need to replace the rear spark plugs and wires in the exact same manner that we replaced the front ones. Should be nice and easy. While I'm in here, I should say there is a plenum gasket right here, and this is a good time to replace your plenum gasket, though it's not always necessary. One more interesting thing to point out. If you look back here, you can see something's been living back there. So this is a good opportunity to vacuum all of this crap out and look for any wires that have been chewed through. Reinstallation is pretty much straightforward now that you've uninstalled everything. I do notice while I'm in here that this throttle plate is really nasty, so I'm going to go ahead and do a seafoam spray service on this later on. I'll put that in a separate video. For now, let's go ahead and install everything. So now I've started all three of the 12mm bolts that go on the back, and I have this loosely set in place. Now it's time to start putting on the bolts and the nuts. I'm going to use a little bit of anti-seize for these to make sure that in the future I can get them off. Two long ones and three short ones. Alright, now go back to the back. And we'll tighten down those three in the back. Gonna make sure we take this vacuum hose from the fuel pressure regulator and hook it up to the side of the manifold. Now we have two vacuum hoses on the bottom. We have one from the brake booster that goes to the back over here. And then we have the one more in the back over here. We gotta make sure we reattach. So there's two in the back, two underneath, one on the side, and then we got this long one on top. So we're going to make sure we put all these vacuum hoses back or else it's not going to run right. So we went ahead and we put the vacuum line here, two at the bottom, one for the brake booster at the back, and put this back. Now it's time to start putting back some of the electrical connectors. This one here, you can put the clip on the electrical connector beforehand. You can see right there it creates a little spring clip. And all you gotta do is push it on until you hear it snap. Try to pull it off. So we had one electrical connector over here with one type of clip, and then we had two over here with a different type of metal clip. This one here has no metal clip, so that's four electrical connectors. We have one more to do, and that's going to be that ground strap. So now that we've done all four of these connectors, one over here with one type of metal clip, we have these two over here, and these both have the same type of metal clip, and then this one over here has no metal clip. We have to do this engine ground right here. This goes from engine ground to body ground. Now remember, we have to put in this little clip that holds the throttle cable in place. Careful not to move the inside nut, so nothing has to be adjusted. Alright, before I put that other plastic cover on, let's start it up and see what happens.